Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports, where today we are going to be talking about the entire Pierre Luc Dubois situation and other news and notes around the NHL. Thank you all for joining us here again at I-80 Sports. Make sure you follow us on our website, i80sports.com. Make sure you also subscribe and comment and like down below if you like the content that we're giving you on a weekly basis. And make sure you check out the other content on our YouTube page as well, with the big game in football coming up and all of that fun stuff. You want to check out our NFL coverage, you want to check out our college football coverage, and you want to check out our MLS coverage as well. I cannot speak today. This is really amazing. But you can also follow us at I80_sports NHL on Twitter as well. We are going up and up and up and up in terms of viewers. We just crossed the 600 follower threshold as well, making my dream to get to 1,000 followers by the end of the year that much more attainable. We hope you like what you've seen so far. I'm Brian. He's Tom, as usual. Tom, how are you doing today?
Doing well. We had a an interesting week now in the league. A lot of stuff happened. A lot of stuff going on. Some good, some not so good. Some head scratchers. But you know what? Let's just get right into it, and we'll dive right into it.
We will be diving right in, and on the docket for today of what we're going to be talking about, we're going to be breaking down the entire situation with Pierre Luc Dubois as it evolved last week, as well as other news and notes that we're going to bring you right now around the league. And we start with some unfortunate news, because at the beginning of last week, the Washington Capitals were fined $100,000 for breaking COVID protocols. It turns out the Russian machine, which consists of Alexander Ovechkin, Evgeny Kuznetsov, Ilya Samsonov, and Dmitry Orlov, were all placed in COVID protocol. And as it turns out, Ilya Samsonov was diagnosed with COVID-19. We certainly hope that he recovers soon and that there is no issues there, especially with the rest of the Washington Capitals organization. But Tom, this is not a very good look right now for the Washington Capitals, don't you think?
Most definitely is not. I can understand where they're coming from, where, they thought just breaking a simple rule and going into each other's hotel rooms and just hanging out watching TV would be fine. But, as you saw what came of it, Samsonov now has COVID. The league is very, very strict, and just about every professional league is very, very strict with this stuff. Believe me, nobody likes being isolated. And, these guys especially, they're athletes. They love the nightlife. They love to go out, whether it's in their home city or whether they're on the road. And to be told that you have to stay in a hotel room and you can't go anywhere when you're on the road, it's not the greatest thing in the world. But you want to know what? At the same time, it's your job is to play hockey. You're getting paid to play a sport that most of us would love to be earning a paycheck to play. So, not a good look on the Caps, not a good look on these guys. But you know what? They learned their lesson. Hopefully they come out of it better people, and hopefully, within a few months, all this can be put behind us.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more with what your statement was. It's all about being safer. And I've gotten the question before of just like, well, okay, why is it that they can, be maskless on the bench, but then there's a problem when they go to hotel rooms? It's just like, well, they have to test negative to actually play in those games. So you actually have to follow the protocol to be able to play in these games and not be placed on COVID protocol. So that being said, hopefully Washington learns a lesson from this. But as we've been seeing around the league, I mean, other people have been affected from COVID protocol as well. It seems like Mackenzie Blackwood for the New Jersey Devils, who's been lights out in net for the Devils, was also placed on the COVID list last week. And it was devastating at first for the Devils. They went in and played the New York Islanders on Thursday last week, and they got walloped with Scott Wedgwood in net. But he redeemed himself very much last night with a shutout last night against the Islanders as well. He got his redemption in spades, but it is quite the concern. It kind of raises the question of how can these players avoid the COVID protocol? How can they do better? What can the league do to break that down? Tom, do you have any thoughts to that?
You know what? It's really difficult. It's really difficult to, it's difficult to put your finger on it because there's times too. I mean, you have these guys in DC, they knowingly did it. There's sometimes where these, a guy could just be walking and get a cup of coffee or something and come across somebody and he doesn't even know about it. I think the league's doing the best they can. The unfortunate part is that I think if they were to do that bubble again for a whole season, the players would have never went for it. It's a really slippery slope with this thing. It's hard to see what they can be doing better. They're trying to play, they're playing to appease us fans right now. They even said that if they didn't play, they'd save a ton of money. They're doing this to appease us, to keep us at home, to keep us from going out and doing something stupid. So it's hard to say what more can be done or what better they can do. Sometimes accidents just happen. I mean, I don't know where Blackwood went. I don't know how he got it. Was he hanging out in a hotel room? I feel like if he was, more Devils would have done it. Would have been put on the COVID list, but he wasn't. He could have very well just been walking into a store and not noticed, gone by somebody who was positive and caught it by mistake. Who knows? Who knows? So it's a really slippery slope to see how they can do better with this. There's no real right answer here.
Yeah, I think it's difficult, and I think, there are avoidable situations, there are unavoidable situations, but certainly, we certainly hope that anybody or in any facet of the organization, whether it's the players, the front office, and even as low down as the people who clean the ice every single night, we hope that everybody does stay safe, and we hope that if anybody is affected, that it isn't devastating. But moving on to other news in the the NHL was kind of hit with a big surprise, and so were fans when it was announced that NBC Sports would be shutting down at the end of 2021, which would mean that the NHL games would end up defaulting to the USA Network. And the league is currently looking for multiple broadcast partners. I mean, I can kind of speculate a little bit, but Tom, what's your thoughts of NBC Sports shutting down? Were you surprised by this?
I was a little surprised, but if you really look at NBC Sports as opposed to the other big sports networks like Fox and like ESPN, the one thing those guys have that NBC doesn't is they're carrying like multiple American sports played on this continent. All NBC is really carrying is hockey on NBC Sports, and they're carrying English Premier League soccer as well, but they really don't have another sport that they can carry in the summertime. And I mean, if you really pop that network on in the summer, it's really just you're watching antique car shows and, water skiing and boat racing and, maybe some of that off-road racing. The biggest problem with them is that outside of, I mean, they have NASCAR, but I think they're splitting out with Fox as well, too. So, I mean, I can understand why they want to get rid of it and just move some stuff to USA because they own USA too, and just have USA as the sports as their sports partner for cable television. But at the same time, the NHL really is the only professional league in this continent. I'm going to say this continent because we have Canadian teams in the league, and they've been actually shown more on network television on NBC Sports over the past few years. They're the only league right now that doesn't have multiple broadcast partners. They're really just on NBC. Everybody else, you have ESPN or Fox, or the NFL is obviously on network TV. You have the MLB is on Fox, and the MLB is on ESPN. You have the NBA going on ABC and then TNT. The NHL doesn't have that right now. They're looking for another partner. I know a lot of people are saying ESPN, but I really don't think so, to be honest with you. I really do think you'll be seeing Fox picking it back up. Because Fox Sports has really revamped themselves over the last few years. And I'd say they may even have surpassed NBC. NBC, I would think, was like the creme de la creme about 10 years ago. I think Fox may have surpassed them. Fox has a lot of programming that they do. And I could see them now with Fox, with Big Boy Fox, Channel 5 or Fox, wherever you live, wherever your main Fox station is. They have Fox Sports 1 and they have Fox Sports 2. So now you can split your games between NBC and Fox, and you can you have more games of the week. You have more national programming. I mean, it might not be good for us who don't like the national games and the national announcers, but for the league, it's a step forward because, like I said, I'll harken back to it. They are the only league right now that doesn't have multiple broadcast partners nationally.
Yeah, and this is very true. I mean, for me, part of me also wanted to say, just tell ESPN, just like bring the NHL back, you cowards. Just do it already. It's not going to happen. No. It's not going to happen. But then B, I feel like it's not the right move for the NHL. It's not the right move to go back to ESPN. As much coverage as they would end up getting on ESPN, I think they would be much better served. I agree with you, Tom. They'd be much better served on Fox, and Fox would end up doing a lot of good with that property, with the NHL property in general. So we'll have to see what happens with that as the year, goes on, and we'll see where the NHL ends up. Hopefully not on a channel like Versus, like back in the day. Hopefully not, but I think those days are long gone. Unfortunately, before we move on to the big piece of this video, we do want to mention the unfortunate passing of former captain of the 1960s Toronto Maple Leafs dynasty. George Armstrong has passed away at age 90, and I know Tom does have some words to describe George Armstrong, so I'm going to let Tom take it away right now.
Okay. One more thing before I go into George Armstrong. For those of you who are proponents of wanting the NHL back on ESPN, if you watch that World Cup in 2016, look how good of a job they did. It was terrible, terrible. And I can go into that another time because we'll be here for an hour. But George Armstrong, yeah, he was maybe one of the first captains who ever led by example. He was not a superstar. He played in a couple All-Star games here and there, but he was never a league MVP, never won a Hart Trophy or an Art Ross, never won a Selke or a Lady Byng. But the guy was just a lead by example guy for Toronto. Those Toronto dynasties in the 60s, they were very much veteran laden dynasty. The Leafs were known to pick up older players from teams who couldn't do it for their shot at the cup. His job might have been tougher than any other captain in the league at the time because he had to bring all these veteran guys, all these guys who were still stars or once stars, keeping them together in that locker room and going out there and winning the Stanley Cup. They won 3 cups in a row in 62, 63, and 64. And then in 67, the centennial year in Canada, they won it when Montreal was actually favored. Guy was a lead by example guy, hard worker, was never going to get you 100 points, was never going to score you 50 goals. But he was definitely a guy you could rely on. He was definitely a guy that if you had him on your team or you were a fan of him, you would love. And, I don't think, from what I've read about him and from what I've heard about him, I don't think anyone has ever had a negative thing to say about him. One more thing I will say about George Armstrong is that he was a very good coach, too. He won a few Memorial Cups coaching the Toronto Marlboro Junior Club after he retired. He won a few of those. And the guy just, he bled the blue and white. He was, up there with guys like Davey Keon and Sil Apps in those old Leafs teams, one of the Leafs legends. And, he was the last person to hoist the Stanley Cup first in a Maple Leafs jersey. It's been that long. So rest in peace, George Armstrong. Our thoughts to his family, to his friends, to the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, to all the fans of the Toronto Maple Leafs, to the fans of him who were around when they were winning those cups. Our thoughts go out to you all. He was definitely a noticeable hockey player. I don't know if he was one of the greats, but he was definitely a guy who just you could depend on, and definitely a guy who I feel that anybody would want on their team.
I'll piggyback on what Tom said and also say, we extend our sincerest condolences to the Armstrong family during this very, very difficult time. From NBC Sports to you guys. But time to get to the main attraction of this video, because if you saw the title down below, we're talking about him today. We've been talking about him for weeks, and it's finally come to a head. So Pierre Luc Dubois, let's talk about this. I'm going to focus on me for a second, only because I've got a lot of context with Dubois to go over. Just little news and notes that we've been talking a little bit about over the course of the past few weeks, but feel like we need to backpedal real quick and also talk a little bit about it. So first off, Pierre Luc Dubois, when the season started, he was a Columbus Blue Jacket. He had signed a 2-year extension with the Columbus Blue Jackets before the season had began. But as it turns out, Dubois discreetly met with the GM to request a trade. He wanted to continue playing, but he wanted to be dealt out of Columbus. The rumors were he didn't get along with John Tortorella, the head coach. And, well, I think that might have been true, because head coach John Tortorella, bitter about the news, goes on 97.1 FM in Columbus and says, oh, yeah, Dubois requested a trade and he doesn't want to be in Columbus anymore. So that kind of rattled and shook the, stirred the pot a little bit with that. So from that point on, when the season began, Dubois' minutes began to shrink. It just shrank and shrank and shrank. in the game where he scored the game-tying goal about a week, maybe week and a half back at this point, he only saw 15 minutes of game time, where he was averaging about 22 minutes a game before then. And then on Thursday, January 21st, Pierre Luc Dubois shows a lack of effort on 2 plays in a row. So John Tortorella benched Dubois midway through the first period, kept him on the bench for the rest of the game. He only logged about 3 minutes of game time. Now, yes, both people were probably at fault for that. Dubois was at fault for not putting in the proper effort. Tortorella was probably in the wrong for how he handled the situation and afterwards. And by Saturday morning, it was clear what was about to happen because the inevitable happened. Pierre Luc Dubois was traded, and it was a doozy of a deal. He was dealt to the Winnipeg Jets along with a third-round pick in 2022, I believe, for forward Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic. And Roslovic was a restricted free agent who didn't sign with the Jets at that point. He now has signed an extension with Columbus. He will be playing for Columbus. And now all 3 of these players are going to be in a 2-week quarantine period. We're not going to see them in their newest uniforms for at least 7 games at minimum. And as it turns out, there's some interesting news coming out about Patrick Laine in his tenure with the Winnipeg Jets. We're not going to dive into that today. We're going to save that for next week because there's more to unpack with that. There's enough to unpack with the Pierre Luc Dubois situation. But Tom, what's your quick thoughts about this move overall and Saga?
I think it was a bad trade for Columbus. I really do. I really think it was a bad trade. As much as Jack Roslovic wanted out of town, as much as what we've heard about Patrick Laine, I just don't think Pierre Luc Dubois is worth Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic. I really think Winnipeg got hosed on this trade. It strengthened them down the middle. Don't get me wrong. Now you have 3 centers with Scheifele, Dubois, Stastny. But Patrick Laine, was one of their best players and maybe their best goal scorer. And now you gave him up. You gave him up for like a career 50-point guy. It just doesn't make sense to me. I know Laine had his problems. I know Roslovic wanted out, and I know Dubois wanted out. But I feel like Winnipeg might have jumped the gun a little bit here. And as far as what happened in the games with Torts when he was being sat out, it does make me wonder if Jarmo Kekalainen was calling down and Torts and saying, "Hey, listen, I might have a deal. Sit him down. Don't let him get hurt. We don't know that. We may never know that. All in all, I don't like this trade. I really don't like this trade. It really hurts Winnipeg. It really helps Columbus, and I hate anything that helps John Tortorella. Anything that lets him keep a job and lets him win more games and lets him be shown in a more positive light. I don't like it.
While I agree with you on the standpoint that I don't like the fact that this could end up benefiting John Tortorella, because I will come right out and say, based on my personal opinion, I'm not the biggest fan of John Tortorella, but I actually like this deal for Winnipeg, and I'll tell you why. Number one, you get to Pierre Luc Dubois for 2 years, which, if he ends up performing well for them past that, you could end up re-signing him. That's number one. Number two, Columbus is getting Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic. Okay, granted, Roslovic for a little bit longer, but Laine on borrowed time. And I can't help but feel like I could see parallels with what happened with Artemi Panarin in Columbus, like what's about to happen to Patrick Laine in Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is going to end up badly for Columbus, where they are going to completely bungle this whole entire thing. Like, first of all, you get rid of one of your only big centers, which, in the NHL is like gold now. Like, teams that with deep center depth are doing well. You look down the line at guys like in Philly. Philly has center depth. Now Winnipeg has center depth, legitimate center depth. And you didn't have to give up names like Cole Perfetti in a deal like this either, which a lot of people are forgetting. Winnipeg has Cole Perfetti. And yeah, I might not have liked Cole Perfetti when he was drafted, but you know what? If he works hard, you might not miss not Jack Laine. You might miss Patrick Laine when Cole Perfetti finally comes up. Either way, all talented players that swapped sides. I think Winnipeg got the better of this deal because Columbus's track record with doing anything with talent when John Tortorella has been the head coach, it's been bad news. Sure, you spoil a few series. You spoil a Tampa Bay Stanley Cup. Woo, good job. Good on you. Have you ever won a Stanley Cup? No. Are you going to win a Stanley Cup with this lineup? Maybe, but maybe not. Like, there's other teams that are doing better. Winnipeg, namely, with this deal. But, it's still early on. This deal's going to evolve over time. The guys, all three of these players haven't even played a game for their respective teams yet. So there's going to be a lot to unpack over the course of the next coming weeks. And next week, we are going to be talking about Patrik Laine a little bit more because of some details that we are learning over the coming days of his relationship in Winnipeg. So if you are a fan of Winnipeg, you definitely want to check out our episode next week based on that. But we're going to lay this Dubois saga to rest. Thank God this saga is done. I feel like we've been talking about Pierre Luc Dubois for weeks now, and it feels good to finally see that he's done, he's gone, he's in Winnipeg. He's potentially going to be happier there. But, that's the biggest thing. Hockey should be fun. And if you're not having fun, you're not playing for the right team. So hopefully Pierre Luc Dubois finds some happiness in Winnipeg. Hopefully Laine and Roslovic perform well for Columbus to justify the deal as well. And we'll just see what happens. But moving right along to our next segment, we are approaching the fans corner again, where Tom, as we all well know, he is a big diehard New York Rangers fan to his detriment. I am a diehard New Jersey Devils fan to my detriment. So we are going to be talking about things that we liked from this past week, things that we might not have liked from this past week. So if you're a fan of New Jersey Devils and the New York Rangers, this is the segment for you. Tom, we're going to start with you. What did you think about the Rangers' performance this week? You have the floor.
Well, I mean, I don't know what to say about it. It wasn't good. It plain and simple was not good. Despite it not being good, there were some bright spots. Number one bright spot, who it's a given right now, Artemi Panarin. They played 5 games, 6 points in 5 games, 2 goals, 4 assists. He seems to be carrying the play out there with his lines out there. He seems to be in on every goal. His power play or even strength when he's out there. I mean, it's Artemi Panarin. He's playing just as well as he did last year. I don't have a bad thing to say about him right now. Another guy who I'll give a thumbs up to, Adam Fox. And Adam Fox is a guy who I had been praising the last year, as Adam Fox is going to become that number one defenseman in New York, if he's not already. I think he already is. If you look out there how he plays, both ends of the ice, can carry the play, can quarterback a power play, kind of like Brian Leetch used to in a way. And really, Adam Fox has been everything and more. I thought out of anybody last year when they were bringing those guys, and I thought Fox might have been the bust. Fox has been great for the Rangers, and he's going to continue to be great. And, I mean, am I saying this year this will happen? No, but I'm saying I could see him winning a Norris Trophy a few years down the road. Exactly when? I can't tell you because I can't see in the future. But Adam Fox is really, really becoming that guy. And for all of us who are Team USA fans, and with the hope that you will see some more best-on-best tournaments, he'll be that guy. He'll be that number one defenseman for Team USA in a few years, hopefully. If not number one, but at least top 4 defenseman. Another guy who I really think is doing well, Kaapo Kakko. People were calling for his head after that Devil game, and I don't know why. Okay, Hughes had a good game. Great. Good for Jack Hughes. He had a good game. The rest of the team didn't play well. Kakko has 2 goals now in 5 games. He's right on track for what we thought he would be. In a normal season, 2 goals in 5 games, you're putting yourself on pace for about 25 to 30 goals, maybe a little bit more. And that's all you can ask from Kaapo Kakko. A lot of people thought that this guy would be the savior and he'd be our Sidney Crosby. I said that Kakko is a good player. He's going to be a good player. But the things I've said about Kakko are this, is that Kakko is going to be that first or second line right wing that you hope you can get 30 to 40 goals out of and 60 to 70 points out of it. And if that's the player Kakko becomes, and obviously it won't happen this year because we're not playing a full 82, but if that's the player he becomes over the next few years, then Kaapo Kakko is everything as advertised. I'm going to finish up with a rookie we have, and we have 2 rookies that were, big highlighted coming in, but one guy that not a lot of people talked about I'm going to talk about right now, and that's K'Andre Miller. K'Andre Miller has been great back there on D. They paired him up with Jacob Trouba. He looked great against Pittsburgh last night. He took space away from Crosby all night. The guy looks like he's been in the league for 5 years. Looks like a veteran when he has a puck. Makes great decisions. Great with the puck. Doesn't look scared out there. Isn't afraid to throw his body around. Keandre Miller is more. I thought he was going to be good, but I didn't think he was going to be this good. Keandre Miller is somebody that's, I don't know if I want to say surprised me, because I thought that Keandre Miller would be a top 4 defenseman, but I just didn't think he would be in those situations and playing this well this quick. So hats off to Keandre Miller, and I hope our other 2 rookies, and Lafreniere and somebody else who I will name in a few minutes, can, take notes off of him and see how calmly he plays the game and, play like him. Play with the mental state that he plays in. Now we'll go into the bad. I'm one to never, ever blame goalies. Never, ever want to blame goalies, but we need more out of Igor Shesterkin. We do. We do. Those 2 games against Pittsburgh this weekend, Friday and Sunday night, should have been wins. He let in bad goals in each game, let Pittsburgh back in the game, and they wound up losing the game. 2 bad ones last night in the third period. The game tying goal, which he didn't even see, and the game winning goal, which he should have jumped on and just, went off his pad. I'm sorry. I don't like to blame goalies, but we need more out of Igor. We need him to be the player he was last year. Players projected to be. We need more out of Igor Shesterkin. Tony DeAngelo was another one, with his antics last week. I mean, I guess he was okay in these games this weekend. I didn't really notice him, and I said last year to everybody that maybe they shouldn't keep Tony DeAngelo. Maybe they should trade him, because you have Adam Fox coming up, who right now is surpassing him, and I think is going to keep surpassing him. And outside of, Igor and Tony DeAngelo as the 2 bad, just about everyone else has been bad. There's, Zibanejad, I guess, had a goal against the Devils, which is nice. Lafreniere, while he hasn't been terrible, I don't want to say he's bad. He's just been sort of neutral, I guess. He hasn't been great, but he hasn't been terrible. I don't know. This team needs to pick it up, and they need to figure it out quick. And maybe figuring it out quick, maybe analyzing what the coach is doing, what the coaching staff is doing with them. Now, I was never a big David Quinn fan, but I never hated David Quinn. I didn't want David Quinn as a coach of this team when they did the rebuild. But right now, I'm starting to think as a college coach, as college coaches, you play your seniors and your sophomores and your freshmen, and it's a whole hierarchy in college. This isn't college, it's the NHL. You got to let these kids play. And as much as I said about Lafreniere being neutral, Lafreniere did not see the ice in overtime Friday night. That's unacceptable. I'm sorry. That's unacceptable. Lafreniere thrives out there with the open ice. Let the kid play. What do you got to lose? Let him play. Why did he not play Friday night? Why was he not on the ice? I'm sorry I'm getting upset here, but there was no excuse for that. He should have been given a couple shifts in overtime Friday night. I don't care if he didn't earn it. I don't care about that. That's a problem with guys like Tortorella and guys like Quinn. They have these big, hold guys accountable mentalities, and they sit their stars on the bench, and that's why their teams don't go anywhere. So, I mean, I don't want to say Quinn is a ceremonial coach, but a lot of times when teams rebuild, you stick a guy in there, just to string the team along, and then you get rid of him and bring in a more experienced guy. Now, I'm not saying that has to happen now, and I don't think it should happen now. But if this is still going on 5 to 10 games from now, and Gerard Gallant is still sitting at home without a job, you maybe need to start thinking about going that direction. And that's all from me.
A lot there to unpack based on what you said. Can I also mention one thing that in my earlier predictions, I was thoroughly on the Keandre Miller bandwagon, like heavily. I love this kid so much. As a Devils fan, obviously, I have to hate how good he is. I have to hate how good Adam Fox is. But man, I am jealous. The fact that you guys have Adam Fox and Keandre Miller.
But jealous. Don't think of it as a Devils fan. Think of it as a USA hockey fan. Think of it as we're going to maybe have the pros back at the Olympics. Think about how good they'll be for USA. And before you lead in here, that's kind of why I can't get that mad when I see Jack Hughes dazzle out there lately. Because you want to know why? If we're going to go into a best-on-best in a couple of years, maybe next year in the Olympics, and we're going to have a three-headed monster at center of Austin Matthews, Jack Eichel, and Jack Hughes, I like our chances.
Yeah. And what a perfect segue into what I thought of the Devils from this past week. I mean, aside from the loss on Thursday, I'm happy as a clam with how the Devils are doing lately. We talked a little bit about Jack Hughes a couple seconds ago, and this kid keeps getting better and better and better and better. Holy moly, I'm impressed with him so far. And I've always been impressed with him. I didn't buy into the whole, oh, he's a bust. He sucks. He's this, he's that. I didn't buy into any of that chatter, and even grace and dignify it with a response last year to those fans that were so quick to detract him and cut his legs off. Look at what he's doing now. I'm impressed with his puck skills. I'm impressed with his speed. I was impressed with his speed last year, but he looks comfortable. He looks relaxed. He's poised. He looks like he's been doing it for a long time now. Those 15 pounds of muscle that he put on has paid off and paid off in dividends right now. He is one of the leading scorers in the NHL right now, and he's been fantastic. The hype, he's living up to it this year. I don't think there's a question about that. In net, obviously we didn't have Mackenzie Blackwood for most of this week, but Scott Wedgwood is starting to make the backup goalie situation a real competition. Now, the Devils currently have Eric Comrie and Aaron Dell waiting in the wings. Eric Comrie's been backing up Scott Wedgwood while Blackwood's been away. But with a great shutout on Sunday night against the Islanders, I think it's going to be a difficult decision for Lindy Ruff going forward of where he's going to be looking for that backup help. I mean, Wedgwood is really showing that he deserves to be there, that he wants to be there, that he wants to be playing every other game, and he's not bad. He's a little slow side to side from time to time, but he wasn't that slow on Sunday. Might have been just an anomaly on Thursday. Plus, for the Devils, this is also a good problem to have, especially during an expansion draft year where you have Seattle coming in at the end of the year. Now you don't have to expose Mackenzie Blackwood to the expansion draft. You can expose Aaron Dell, you can expose Eric Comrie, you can expose Scott Wedgwood and be totally fine. But more is always better in this situation. Other things I really like, Ty Smith, I was so worried in his first game that he wasn't ready for the NHL, that he looked a little bit more like he did last year. But man, I am so glad I was wrong about that. He is currently tied for the lead. Actually, he might be in the lead now amongst all NHL rookies in points right now, which I did not have pegged. I believed in the kid, but I didn't believe in him that much to actually say in my prediction that he would be there right now. Now, obviously, it's early on, but he's been impressive. He's been finding points. He's been dishing the puck very, very well. He's been playing very well on both ends, especially in the offensive area. And Jack Hughes, his roommate, actually said he reminds him a lot of his brother Quinn Hughes, who plays for Vancouver, which if he can get that type of comparison, I think that bodes very, very well for the rest of Ty Smith's tenure this year as a New Jersey Devil and going forward for the future of this defense corps. Lastly, the one thing I wanted to mention in terms of good things was I really like how the bottom six looks right now. Michael McLeod and Nathan Bastian look very comfortable together, and rightfully so, and as I assume they would be. They've been friends for a very long time, and they were teammates in Mississauga, and they've been together. They're practically brothers at this point. They've definitely earned their spots once Brat and Heischer are ready to return. In that regard, Brat's going to be ready probably as soon as he could be ready, as soon as a week from now, which is great to add him back into your top six. Now, interesting guys that I think could be at risk of losing some playing time. Andreas Janssen and Nikita Gusev, two names that I didn't think would be in that conversation. They've been pretty flat right now, which is really, really interesting to see that they really haven't been doing much with the puck. They've been losing some playing time here and there. Nothing thrilling from them. But I think they can get their game going, and I think what it's going to take is, ironically, Nico Hischier to come back and to split down the middle between Janssen and Gusev, because I actually think a line of Janssen, Hischier, and Gusev can be very, very productive. I think that's honestly all it takes for them to really kind of get going, is to have a good center setting them up. I think you're going to have some interesting question marks going forward for the Devils of who ends up factoring out of this lineup soon. Once you have Brat, Hischier, and Vatanen coming back, I think there's some really big question marks coming forward for the Devils. But in all honesty, they are really, really good question marks. I'm happy with the Devils so far. So now we're going to move along real quick to some general thoughts around the NHL. And I know Tom's going to agree with me on this one, but the Montreal freaking Canadiens, man, holy cow. I'll eat my words for my predictions. They are so good. Tom, expand on this.
You know what? They're playing well. They're playing well, and they're getting production from all four lines. Tyler Toffoli, man. Wow. Tyler Toffoli, the way he's played this week. I watched their game against Vancouver Saturday night, and the game actually got interesting. Vancouver tied early in the third. I said, all right, we got a game here. Montreal just came back and rammed it down their throat. Montreal's playing well right now, and they're traditionally, they haven't played a game at home yet either. They played all on the road, so we'll see now that they're coming back home. Will they be jet lagged? Was it just a stroke of luck that they started out well against these Western Canadian teams? Who knows? If you go back to the lockout shortened season of 2013, they were one of the best teams in the East all year. They won their division, and I'm wondering if that's the same thing that's happening this year. They don't really have they're not really a star-laden team, but they seem to be getting it done early on. So we shall see what happens. As the next weeks go on, if they keep this up, we may have our surprise team of the year in the Montreal Canadiens and the Habs. We shall see.
We'll see what happens. I mean, I've been very impressed with Alex Romanov right now, the rookie defenseman for the Montreal Canadiens as well. Picked him up for my fantasy team, and I've been very happy about that. I got to shout out real quick to Bob, one of our heads at I-80 Sports. He took Tyler Toffoli from under my feet. I literally had the add button ready to go, and I got an error message because Bob took him first. So, Bob, darn you. And you're going to be really happy with Tyler Toffoli. I'm also salty because I'm down 0-2 this week after being shut out by points week in and week out. That's a story for next week. But, oh, man, the Canadians are so good lately, and I hope they keep this roll going. To wrap up for this week, though, as we did last week, and we are going to make this a continuous segment, it is time for our listener question of the week, where each week we will be asking the community who listens to I-80 Sports to send us what your biggest question in the NHL is at that current moment. Doesn't have to be related to one of our favorite teams, and it doesn't even have to relate to a specific team, which actually this question does not relate to a specific team this week, because this week, Ronnie on Facebook asks, quote, "There's been such an emphasis lately on the 2-goalie system. How important is that system in the shortened season this year?" And Ronnie, thank you for your question, because we're going to dive into this right now. And man, in a shortened season like this, under the circumstances, I actually think you kind of need a 3-goalie situation to really kind of get by. Tom, what are your thoughts on this question? What do you think about the 2-goalie system for this year?
I think you are going to need it. This year is actually very similar to the way the NCAA schedules their games, where you play 2 games a weekend. You'll go, let's just take, for example, here, we'll take the ECAC, Princeton, our home state, New Jersey, Princeton hockey, and you take a team like, say, Cornell. So you'll play Cornell. Princeton will play it like a not a home and home really, but it'd be just like 2 games back-to-back nights. You'll play a Friday and Saturday night, or maybe a Saturday night and a Sunday afternoon against Cornell, both games in a row. And a lot of times, you do need to start. College teams carry 3 goalies, and the 3-goalie system might even be needed this year. We don't know that yet. We have to see. But back-to-backs traditionally in NHL, you always start your backup and your second back-to-back. So you start your backup in your first, and your starter in your second. But this year, yeah, you're going to see you're going to see these 2-headed goalie monsters. You're going to see them more often this year. It's something they've been trying to enact in the NHL for the last 30 years. The Oilers tried to do it in the 80s with Grant Fuhr and Andy Moog. When Roger Nielsen coached the Rangers, tried to do it with John Van Beesbrook and Mike Richter. Obviously, both times the starter backup model won out. But lately, through the last few years, you've kind of actually been seeing it happen more often, where goalies are splitting duty. And this year especially, because it's set up like college hockey, and you're playing a lot of back-to-backs, and you're playing a similar NCAA schedule, that backup goalie this year is going to be important, because that's the guy. You have a good backup. That may be the reason. That may be the difference between making the playoffs and staying home. So I think it's very important. Very important to have 2 goalies, and very important to have 2 sharp goalies. I think this is not the year where you can use that 60-40 or 70-30 model, where your starter plays 60%, your backup plays 40, 70-30, same thing, with 70%, 30%. I think you need to have 2 sharp goalies this year, regardless of skill, regardless of anything. They both need to be sharp. They both need to be ready to play, because, like I said, that's what can mean making the playoffs and staying home from the playoffs.
I'll throw a little bit into that as well with think about what's happening in the Central Division right now, with the fact that there have been multiple postponements based on Dallas's schedule being jacked and Florida's schedule getting jacked a little bit. We're seeing right now, just to lay a few stats on, Dallas has to play 56 games in 104 days. That's a game every 2 days. And that's not just them, that is going to be the entire Central Division. The two goalie system is imperative this year. It is so important this year. You're going to have days where your starting goaltender is going to need a break. He's going to need to catch a breath, catch a breather, and rest himself so that way you can have that chance of making the playoffs. And Tom is absolutely right. Having a good backup is the difference in watching the Stanley Cup from home and playing in the Stanley Cup. So I absolutely think that the 2 goalie system this year is insanely important. In the Devils case, the 3 goalie system or 4 goalie system could end up being important. And for other teams as well. It's just very important for these teams to really, have that system in place right now. You're seeing it with the Edmonton Oilers. They're having a rough time right now because of the 2, not having the 2 goalie system in place. But we'll see what ends up happening. Ronnie, thank you so much for the question. We did appreciate it, and we were able to sink our teeth into this one. And great question. And hey, for those of you listening out there, if you want your question featured in an upcoming episode of I-80 Sports, it's simple. All you have to do is follow us on all of our platforms. Where can you follow us? That's a great question. Nobody who asked. I'll show you. So first of all, you can follow us at i80sports.com. That's one common place that you can find us. You can also find us on Facebook at the I-80 Sports discussion group. For your NHL content, you can follow us at I80_sports NHL, where I certainly do my share of retweeting different posts, questions as well. So if you want to join the conversation, join us, be a part of us, and ultimately make sure that you subscribe for more content here on YouTube, as well as like and comment and share with all of your friends, because sharing is caring. But Tom, any last thoughts before we break?
No, let's just hope for a little improvement in my favorite team in the Rangers, and let's just hope for another good week of hockey, hopefully not too many COVID outbreaks, and just hopefully some good things to talk about next week. You never know what's going to happen within the matter of 7 days.
Exactly. And 7 days can change a lot, as we've seen. So make sure that you're still checking us out on all platforms, so that way you can stay up to date with all NHL content. I'm Brian. He's been Tom, as per usual. This has been I-80 Sports.